everyone, and thanks for joining. My name is Tracy Cook. I'm with Online Media Manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Critical Success Factors for Business Analysts. Today's webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the question and answer session at the end. Please be sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature on the GoToWebinar software. Today's featured speaker is Steve Blaise, PMP, PMI, PBA, author, consultant, teacher, and coach who has over 55 years experience in information technologies. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. And hello to everybody. Welcome. We're going to talk about critical success factors. Let me take my face away so we can focus on the material here. Okay, so what we're going to do is answer these questions. Well, what is a critical success factor? Obviously, we can't talk about critical success factors unless we make sure we have the same definition. And what should you as a business analyst be concerned with? And are there any critical success factors for business analysts themselves? So first of all, what is a critical success factor? Well, from an organizational perspective, and if you ask, in general, what a critical success factor, that's what you're going to get, is the critical success factor for the entire organization, or the organization that you're working for. But there are also critical success factors, for example, for projects. What is this critical success factor for this project? Either way, whether it's for an organization, a department, or anything, it's something, an element, a factor that is necessary for everyone to believe that was a success, that we have succeeded in doing whatever it was that we're doing, as an organization, as a department, as a project. So where does CFS come from? Well, on the organizational side, the organizational CFS, making such and such a profit, or being environmentally friendly, or releasing new products 3 times a year, whatever it happens to be. That comes from the executives through strategic planning and so forth. That's part of the corporate mission. Typically, the CSFs may occur in corporate policy. So as a business analyst, if you're looking to see what CSFs might apply to your project or whatever endeavor you're involved with, those are 3 sources you might go to in order to make sure you are aligned with the overall corporate CSFs. At the project level, the CSFs are usually defined initially in the business case. This is why we're doing this project. Or, absent a business case, somebody in business management. Again, this is why we're doing the project. We're putting up this much money to get this result out of this project. Some CSFs might come from the project manager. Specific aspects of this project is successful if these things happen. For example, we'll see in a few minutes here, the primary critical success factors of a project are the famous iron triangle: cost, time, scope. A friend of mine, project manager in the UK, told me that those are all good, and as project managers, we certainly have to hit those things, but he felt that if you do the project and people leave the company as a result because you did a death march project, or they all are fighting with each other and they're not very happy, then that he doesn't think it's a successful project. One of his critical success factors was that every person on the team would come back and work again with everybody else, including the project manager, on another project without even thinking about it. Absolutely, yes. So that would be a critical success factor established by the project manager. And there could be critical success factors established by the solution team. Now, that isn't usual over time, but today with Agile, the solution team are the ones who say, these are the backlog items we're going to do in the next sprint. These are the requirements we're going to finish up in the next iteration. They make that decision. So they are actually setting a critical success factor. They are successful if they achieve all of those backlog items in that particular iteration. On the operational side, there are a number of critical success factors. Every key performance indicator might be a critical success factor. There are targets that sales has, marketing has, production has. Those are usually considered automatically to be critical success factors. And what about the business analyst? Well, as we will see, the business problem itself is the business analyst's critical success factor. And to a degree, the solution process, how we go about solving the problem. Ultimately, though, if you look at that list, every one of those critical success factors comes from the business. Even the project manager who says, this is what I want, this is the critical success factor that makes the project successful to me and everybody else. Well, the project doesn't exist without the business funding it to begin with. So all critical success factors originate in the business. Now, here's a question. There's a whole bunch of things out there. There's question marks behind each one of them because the question is, are these critical success factors? To increase the sale by X%, reduce the cost of sales by 15%, stay within the SLA. Project solution team stays together for the whole project. Might be a critical success factor of Agile, for example. Well, you might look at them and say, well, they could be, but the question is, are they critical success factors or are they goals or objectives? Increase sales by X% within this calendar year, that would be more of an objective. Are we going to trade everything so that that will happen? Here, let me give you an example of having multiple critical success factors, theoretically, that may be contradictory. This is an old joke. It's out of Hollywood. And the producer comes in and says, I need it fast, cheap, and good. So we kind of converted it. There's the big manager up there. I need this new feature. I need it fast. I need it right away. I need it inexpensive, and I need it to work really well. The response by the project manager or the director would be, pick two. I cannot give you all three. I cannot make it fast, cheap, and good. Something has got to give. Now, you look at that and you say, I'm seeing a vision here. I'm a project manager. I've worked with projects, and I'm seeing a vision of that triangle again. Can't do it all. So we're saying pick two. In other words, give me a priority here. So what is the difference between goals and objectives that we all, companies have and so forth, and critical success factor? A critical success factor, everybody agrees that the designated factor is critical to the success of whatever we're doing, of the organization, of the department, of the project. We all agree. There's nobody's saying that. Now, constantly you get a goal. Sales has a goal of having multiple different variations on a given product. I want red, and I want blue, and I want yellow, because when a customer wants it, I want to be able to give them what they want. Because my goal, critical success factor, if you will, is increase sales, sell so many of these things. Manufacturing, on the other hand, which has to produce these things, doesn't want to have to keep changing the product, the manufacturing line with every different color, every different variation. They want to just produce one thing all the way through because their goal is producing more product. So we have right there. Clearly, goals are not shared by everyone. Yeah, that might be your goal, but it ain't my goal. A critical success factor, everybody says, yeah, if we don't do this, something bad will happen. The entity has control, complete control over whether we can achieve that critical success factor. For example, that very last one, we are the best purveyor of fast foods in the world. That happens to be right in the middle of the mission statement for McDonald's Corporation. Right? We're going to be the best purveyor of fast foods. Now, I have always remembered that because I thought it was rather interesting. I always assumed that fast foods was kind of a pejorative thing. I came up in the 50s and McDonald's didn't exist. When I was growing up, we went to our first McDonald's. It was in a town 15 miles away. Everyone went to see a McDonald's. It was a thing. It was the first one in the whole area of north of Boston. But so they say in their mission statement, they use the term fast foods. Well, McDonald's does not control the results of becoming the best purveyor. There's competition. No, there's a market changes in definition what the best purveyor is, what fast foods are. So that could not be a critical success factor for McDonald's. They have other critical success factors. The third element is there must be a measurement for us to determine whether the critical success factor has been achieved. There has to be some way of saying we have achieved this factor. And the final one is the downside. If we don't achieve it, bad things are going to happen. Companies going out of business and so forth. Most of the goals that are stated by companies, strategic goals and so forth, do not have that last imprimatur. They don't have it. If we don't increase our sales by 10%, we don't reduce the cost of sales by 15%, we're going out of business. Probably not the case. So, with those in mind, here is the theory behind the critical success factor. They are presented to us by the business. The business says, this is the most important thing, and it's prioritized. This is our most important thing. We want this to happen too, but the first one has to happen. They tell us what it is, okay? Then we, developing the solution in the project, whether it be software or whatever it happens to be, we're going to organize our entire project, our entire development effort around those priorities. As you will see, this is what we would do. However, in reality, it looks like this. And you might have seen this. I've used the same picture before. You're the BA. This is what we need you to do, and this is what we need to have it done in 2 months with this fixed budget. Go get the requirements. Got it, Steve? So there's no critical success factor stated, and if all of those are critical success factors, there's no prioritization. Which one do I give up in order to achieve? Do I give up the budget to achieve the time frame? But that's the reality. That's what we face today and have been for 20, 30 years. Probably for all of the 55 years I've been in the business, this is what we face. So that means that the business analyst has got to kind of be a part of choosing the CSFs for the project, the endeavor, whatever you're working on. So you might, the business analyst might say, the requirements must specify a solution within the budget. That indicates that the cost is going to be the critical success factor, the most important. On the other hand, she might be saying, well, I better stop gathering information because we have to have these done Friday. Right? I turned them in Friday, they've got to be done. So this indicates that there is a time deadline. And the question is, can we get the budget and the time at the same time? Well, I need some more information. I got to talk to people in accounting. Maybe I shouldn't talk to them because, they've been really upset with too many meetings. And, they're annoyed with me. This would indicate that the critical success factor here is keeping a good relationship with accounting or whoever the customer might be. And that certainly is a valid critical relationship, especially if you're assigned to accounting as a business analyst and you're doing all your work for them. You want to keep a good relationship with them. Maybe you are thinking, I better make the requirements perfect. No spelling errors, no punctuation, margin, everything looking really good so that it passes the requirements review meeting. Here, the critical success factor is a good-looking requirements document. All of those things seem to be somewhat in conflict. How do I, if I have all of these things as critical success, any failure of any of them is going to crash the project and me, I'm in trouble. Which one do I choose as the critical success factor? Which ones can I say, that really they're goals or they're something that has to be done? They're all important. Now, as though that's bad enough, we have a whole bunch of critical success factors in the domains. And there's one of my favorite illustrations here. And let's look at what's going on over in the problem domain. We got people over there saying, hey, I really want to see a beautiful user screen. I don't care if it doesn't come in on time. Take an extra few weeks. I just want that intuitive, really easy to use user screen. That is, to me, if you don't show me a good, beautiful user screen, I'm not going to use it. We're going to walk out of the room and you can just do it over again. Over on the other side, we need to get these backlogs items completed this sprint. I don't care about beautiful screens. I don't care about anything else. This is what we're doing. We're agile. We've got a certain velocity to meet. We've got to have these items. We said we're going to do these items as part of the sprint goal. We're going to finish it. But on the other hand, over there, you might have a product owner, or you might have a project manager or a software development manager up there saying, hey, no more changes. Or you're not in agile, right? No more changes. One more change puts us over the budget. We can't do it. It's impossible. Because the most important thing here, the critical success factor, is budget. On the other side, I don't care what it looks like. I need this thing to go faster, as fast as possible. I need to go twice as fast as it's going now. Make it a stupid looking screen, I don't care, but it has to go faster. Notice the conflict right there of what they consider to be critical success factors. In other words, everybody has their own view of what is most important in this project, and what they are going to say is successful. You have this wonderful, beautiful user screen. We've done all the sprints on time. We stayed within the budget, but that guy says, hey man, this is slower than it used to be. Even though it's perception. Oh, and there's one other thing. It's not just all business oriented. There's some personal critical success factors too. This feature had better be good because my promotion depends on it. The critical success factor here, my promotion. If I don't get my promotion, this project fails. I've actually had projects like that. Or, on the other side, I need to be home by 5, the kids have a soccer game. It's critical to me to have a work-life balance. If the project doesn't get done on time, if there are issues, if we have to add extra people and go over the budget, that's not my problem. You should have budgeted it well and done a good estimate. First of all, I have to be home by 5. If I'm not home by 5 and I miss a few of the soccer games, I don't consider this project a success. Not only that, I don't think the company's a success. I'm going someplace else. So everyone has their own personal CSFs, which brings us to a very important factor. I hate to use the word factor, but there you go. Factor in critical success factors, and that's something I call political success factors. Now, critical success factors are acknowledged by everybody. Everybody knows that this is a success factor, and they all know whether it passes or fails. It's not like, well, yes, getting on time coming in on time is a critical success factor. Everyone agrees on that, but I think getting in on time means it's actually up and running on time. I think getting in on time means we finished all the software and now it's ready to be loaded. So we have different determinations of what measures success, on-time success. For a critical success factor, that doesn't happen. Everybody agrees on everything. We have to have this, this, and this done, and if not, the project is not a success. A political success factor, however, is not assumed to have that same criterion. And it's usually associated with how the effort is accomplished. As long as I get that feature done, it shouldn't matter how I do it. My job as a project manager, my job as a software developer, my job as a business analyst is to get the new website up and running, full registration and all of that. And I'm going to do it with Agile. Somebody else says we shouldn't be using Agile. Therefore, if you use something, you use Agile, even if you get a successful website up, I don't consider it a success. Now, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic here, but you get the idea. Now, this is one person. It's possible that it might be a group. Usually, there's a hidden agenda or some other ulterior motives. In other words, politics behind this testament that this success factor must be there. They're the only ones, though, that believe that. Now, they exist, just as we saw on the previous page and before. There always are political success factors. Somebody says it's not successful unless. It's not successful unless you use my cousin on the job. I'm going to consider the project not successful. I don't care how successful. You came in on budget, you came in at the deadline, you delivered everything you promised to deliver. I still say it's not a success because you didn't include my cousin. So, now the person who is most acquainted with critical success factors to begin with, but also political success factors, is going to be the business analyst. So what do you do about political success factors? Well, nothing. Steve, hold on. Don't do anything? Yeah, a lot of the time somebody comes up with this great idea or has this real emotional tie to something, and it's got to be done this way, or this is a factor. And over time, 2, 3 weeks, 3 months, the project goes on for a year. By the time you get to the end, they've completely forgotten. Or they do see that it's actually working. They see the benefits to them. And they say, okay, we didn't really have to do it. So it will go away. Or it's somebody you don't care about, somebody with no political clout. What are they going to do? It's another project manager who says we shouldn't be using Agile. Okay, we're still going to use Agile. So we usually pass, as a business analyst, we pass this on to the project manager. And the project manager gives them all the information, and they can decide whether to react, comply, or ignore. Clearly, if this specific success factor is the CEO of your company, it is very likely you're going to do what you need to do or what you can do to satisfy that particular political success factor. That will be up to the project manager. Now, keep in mind, the PSFs are usually negotiable. CSFs are also, but PSFs are most definitely negotiable. So what's important here? Now that you recognize that there are political success factors and critical success factors, is to make sure that you separate them. Project manager, Tracy is a project manager. Tracy, these are the ones we must do. These are the critical success factors. These other ones, up to you. Now, let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Obviously, there's a lot of good, and there's some downsides. So let's look at some of the things you might not have thought about. Some of the benefits, the good. Hey, it provides general guidance to the entire project. It creates a focus. Keeping the critical success factor in front of people the whole time keeps that focus all the time. Mostly, it helps us make decisions. Trade-offs. There are going to be constant trade-offs. As you know, anybody who's worked on a project, there's constant trade-offs. If you're going to do this, it's going to cost more money, so you're going to exceed the budget. If you're going to do this, it might cost more time. In order to hit the deadline, we've got to keep up these features, and on and on and on. So, if security is a critical success factor, we're going to put more emphasis on security and do more security testing, which means we have to give up something else. Having more security on means it means less friendly user interface, and so forth. But having the critical success factors helps us at the project level, on the business and on the solution team, make those kind of decisions. And it provides a lot of good collaboration points. It's one of the things I've found when you start emphasizing critical success factors, you get a lot of good collaboration, and you get a lot of good, not good collaboration either, which brings us to the challenges. If you define the critical success factors wrong, there may be a lot of bad things happen. There is a lot of difficulty prioritizing the various critical success factors because of the politics. Trying to think of another word for it, but that's what it comes down to. I need this to happen, yeah, but I need this to happen. And they are contrary to each other. Having a set of good critical success factors doesn't stop everybody else from having their own. And even though you know you've got to come in on time, if you emphasize coming in on time at the exclusion of other things, that might cause all sorts of problems as well. So that's good, that's the bad. What's the ugly? Completing an otherwise successful project and missing one of those critical success factors. Coming in and with a really nice, they get the website looks good and people love it and it's increasing sales and everything, but you came in 4 months late. And coming in on time was a critical success. We had to be there September 1st, otherwise the competition comes in September 15th and beats us. All sorts of various stories, I'll mention a few coming up here, will come up by not having the right CSF. That's the ugly part. So, what's your job as a business analyst in relationship to critical success factors? Well, you've got to identify them and prioritize them. Hey, Steve, wait, why? Why me? What do I know? I'm a business analyst. Why should I be identifying and prioritizing critical success factors? I have no authority. The business analyst is the business representative to the solution team. They're the business-facing part of the solution team. They do a lot, you should anyway, be doing 60 to 80% of your time spent with the business people. Finding what they want, reviewing materials, showing the prototypes and what is this going to be good? Here's some user screens and some markups, wireframes and mock-ups and so forth. Spending a lot of time with the business, even if you're working for IT and a member of the solution team. So because you're working a lot with the business, you know what the business is up to, what they are. That's where the critical success factor comes from. You can't have the project team sit there and say, okay, I think the most important thing is that we deliver under budget. That may not be. You are the one who is going to be aware of what the real critical success factors are. And as you identify them, you want to establish measurable metrics. Now you say, oh, come on, Steve, that's redundant. Measurable metrics? Well, yeah, the terms are redundant, except that what I mean is you can have a lot of ways of measuring metrics that can't actually be done. Or to set up something that would provide the measurement of a particular CSF would cost more than the project is worth. So we want to establish things that we actually can measure that are not going to cause a lot of consternation or extra time and overhead doing the measurements. And publish and promote, what I mean by that is keep in front of everybody's face. These are the critical success factors. We've got to be in on time and be there in the forefront, ready to negotiate if we can't hit the critical success factor so that we can realign that critical success factor. Ultimately, for the business analyst particularly, but for everybody, there is one constant critical success factor for every single project out there, and that is solve the business problem. You say, okay, well, that's easy. They come down and they tell me this is what we need to have done. You know, we just make sure we have it done, provided it's the right business problem. The business analyst's job, first and foremost, is to make sure that we are solving the real business problem, not symptoms of a problem, not part of a problem, not a problem that isn't really in existence, but the real business problem we should be solving. Because at the end, if you solve a problem that's not really the problem that needs to be solved, what you get is somebody looking at your results and saying, well, yeah, I know that's what I asked for, but you know what, Steve, it's not really what I need. And the project is considered to be a failure. We delivered wonderful software. We delivered it on time. We delivered it within budget, but it didn't solve the right business problem. And we have the statistics to support that 80-something% of the time, 3 different surveys, 3 different studies come up with approximately the same numbers. 80% of the time, businesses solve the wrong problem. So once you have made that, you say, this is the real problem. This is what we should be solving. And everybody agrees on it. Remember, it's got to be universal. Everybody says, yes, that's the problem we want to solve. Yes, I'm willing to put the money up to solve it. Yes, we need to have this done by this time. By George, let's go. Okay, your job isn't done yet, because then all the critical success factors for the business analyst are the project success factors. And what are those? There they are: the cost, time, and scope. Now we can throw in that my friend in the UK who says we can add in the quality of the delivery. All the members of the project team want to work again together. So let's look at a little bit of this. So the time, well, it's a product release. If we don't get this product done by this time, we will fail. We could also put the emphasis, say, on the scope. Now, the time deadline is also much more important today because we have so many sprints, so many iterations that we have to do. Everything's on the 2-week time frame, all these time boxes. I'm not putting them down. I happen to love the whole concept and been working in it for 2 decades now. But we're more attuned to time being the primary critical success factor. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if we have to cut scope. We have to have it out by this time. There are some decisions right there for you. When it comes to being late or not, we're going to be on time. At IBM, we used to be, when we were working on the System 90, we would be given a deadline of September 7th. Is when we had to cut all the tapes of all the changes that we agreed to do by that date, and so it could be taken to the conference, the convention, where they were going to show the new software and the new features. Marketing was already out there touting these new features and so forth. They didn't want to be embarrassed by saying, well, we didn't get it done on time. So we were under the gun to get it all done. Fortunately, they came to us at the beginning, like back in March, and said, you got now 6 months. What can you get done out of this list in those 6 months? Sound like an agile thing too. This was back in the 80s. And so, but the difference is in agile, you work a consistent time frame, 40-hour-a-week type of thing. When it got close, by September 1st, maybe the last week of August, we pushed our hours up to 10 and then 12 hours. By the time we get to September 4th, everyone's working 20 hours a day to make sure we get everything done by that deadline, because it's drop dead. So, scope. There's an example of scope. They just announced these reality glasses, Apple did, last week, right? And it's been in the works for 6 years, 16, some long amount of time. And as is typical at Agile, they didn't say, we want this out by this date. There was no announcement that you're going to get this by this date. Basically, it will be ready when it's ready. We want the product to be, that's the most important thing. Cost, yeah, I have no idea, but I'm sure it costs a whole lot of money. And the deadline, when it's done ready, we will announce it. And what did they do? They announced a product that all of the critics, anybody who's tried it, are raving about. Of course, it costs a little bit of money, but that's how they covered the cost. They said, whatever it costs to get these things done, we're going to do it because we'll make it up by raising the price of the item. And we can do that because we're coming out with a really great item. And finally, cost, budget. Here's an interesting thing. Touted and studied in B schools the moon landing, Apollo. Getting the man to the moon and bringing him back safely to Earth within this decade. Had a time box, had to finish it within the decade. This was 1961 when Kennedy made that statement, May of 1961. The moon landing was in July 69, I think, was when they landed. So you've got a project that was successful in terms of time and successful in terms of scope. It got to the moon and came back. Lauded as one of the great projects. Does anybody remember that it was something like 350%, at least that's the number I heard, 350 times budget in the multiple billions of dollars on something that was originally estimated to be in the millions. All sorts of things happening. It was legitimate. It wasn't just ballooning. It was a lot of things happened, including the deaths of a couple of the astronauts before the launch. So nobody talks about that because that wasn't a critical success factor. Getting the man on the moon and back safely to Earth, that was important. And doing it within a decade, that was important. What does this tell you? As a business analyst in conjunction with the project owner, a project manager, and of course, with the input from the business, you have to make a decision. Remember, I want it fast, cheap, and good. Pick two. We're going to do the same thing. Which of these three is most important? On the projects that you are on right now, do you know which of the three is most important? Which you have flexibility on, and which you don't? That is the critical success. So we need to measure all of the critical success factors. We have to be able to say, we're done. And of course, from a defensive perspective, we want to be able to show, yes, we hit this, here's the proof. We also want to be aware that tangible means we can measure it in monetary values. Non-tangible says, I can't measure it in money, like the reputation of the company. The morale of the employees. I can't measure it in money, but there's got to be some way of measuring that we increase the morale of the employees by 5%, whatever that means. When you are identifying CSFs, in addition to just talking to people and gathering information, listening, observing, and so forth, the product vision, which as Carl Weigers says, is what the world looks like when the problem is solved. It's the view of the business stakeholders for what they expect to see when you solve the problem. That contains an awful lot of things which could be critical success factors which aren't otherwise stated. In other words, critical success factors often are expectations, both voiced and unvoiced. For example, there's our scene again. She says we need to have all these new features by the end of the quarter, voicing a critical success factor. If it's not done by the end of the quarter, bad things. She's thinking, I want it easier to use than it is now. She doesn't state that because she thinks, you already know that. I don't have to tell you that. Both are going to be critical success factors. Those unvoiced are certainly ones that come back to haunt you in the end. Speaking of the end, all critical success factors are reactive. That is, I don't know whether it's successful until it's over. But knowing at the start puts the focus on the critical success factors rather than the noise, rather than all the other impediments and obstacles and so forth that are going on. And it allows, if you know them up front, not decide at the end that, oh, I didn't know this was important. Well, it's too late now. Ultimately, you want to know, how do we know that we are successful? So, how about the BA's critical success factors? There's our BA again. Now she's thinking of these things. Did I define the right business problem completely? How do I find a way of knowing that this is the right business problem? Preferably before we put so much time in it. Oh, I see. My mouse was out of place. Did I include all the necessary information to come up with a valid solution? Do I know that I have all the information? Now, I'll just step in here with a tip. In this case, we may never know that we have all the information. It's probably impossible to get all the information because information will keep changing. There's new information to come up every day. As I'm writing the code, I'm learning more things about it that I could tell the VA that, oh, have you thought about this? I never asked them about that. People will look at what you've done for them and say, oh, since you can do that, how hard would it be to do this? So information constantly coming. So you can say, based on the information that I have right now, the requirements or the project backlog or the stories are 100% complete and 100% correct based on the information I have at this time. Did I make sure that all my requirements are fully measurable and testable before we went to put them in implementation? Did I appropriately represent the business stakeholders on the solution team? Do we have business equal, if not greater than technology? So, to now summarize, the BA, in terms of CSFs, identifies all critical success factors for the project and all that have anything to do with the project, determines how they're going to be measured. That doesn't mean necessarily that you have to come up with a measurement. That means you have to determine how the person who, the critical success factor is going to be measured by the company. And keeps talking about it, keeps the conversation going. Talk about the CSFs. Don't say, okay, these are them, we can check the box and we move on. But keeping in mind that all of the CSFs come from the business. At the end, on the other side, we're going to evaluate the CSFs for relevance, making sure that, yes, this is still a critical success factor. It might change. If, in fact, we are in competition to bring out a product, we want to be first, and the competition is first, maybe it's no longer a critical success factor to be first, because we can't anymore be first. So we change it to, we're going to come out with one that is significantly better than the competition, even if it takes another 3 months. We're going to measure the CSFs as we go along to see how we're going toward that success. And we're going to document and record the success, for lessons learned and so forth. Most of all, as we're trying to determine what the critical success factors are and seeing how they're being held up during the course of the project, we're going to do a lot of listening and a lot of observing. You can always tell when something's important just by watching people's reactions to it. Those critical success factors will determine, kind of drive all the decisions we make in the project about the product and all of the actions we take to develop the product within the project that will guarantee the success of the product, which means the success of the project. Bring us back to Tracy.
Thank you, Steve, for yet again such a great presentation. Just a reminder, we are going to start the question period right now. So if you do have any questions, I'd like you to type them into the questions box. And you're getting some comments right now. And thank you, Steve. And then Amy was also mentioning during when you were talking about the moon landing, about Y2K as well. So yes. I had a little giggle about that one. Excellent. And again, for our attendees online, just a reminder, if you have any questions, to please just use the questions box or any comments. We have Steve for another 15 minutes or so. Seems we have a quiet bunch today, Steve. Just a reminder, today's session is also being recorded, and the presentation along with the recording will be posted on the ModernAnalyst.com website within a couple of business days. You can see that Steve has also left his contact details if anyone wants to reach out to him. Oh, and again, as Sherry was saying, thanks for the great program and love the example, Steve. So thanks for that. And it seems like we have a really quiet bunch today, Steve. So let's just give everyone, oh, here we go. Our first question. Steve, Susan asked, how do you measure BA performance and what are the metrics?
I've been involved with BAs now 30 years, I guess 33 years, since 1990 or so. And that has been a question all along. And when I started, I came over from the dark side. I was a developer. I was on IT side, hard nerd. And we had great measurements. The program's done, it works, you count the number of defects and so forth. But what about a BA? See, the problem with the BA is practically any measurement of a BA is not dependent on the BA itself. For example, solving the business problem. Well, that depends on the project team, the solution team, the project manager, the business, all sorts of things that could cause us to fail. And then you can't say, well, we didn't solve the business problem right, so the BA gets a ding here. How about defining the requirements? There are, again, a whole bunch of things that go into the definition of requirements. The information that was not provided to the business analyst, purposefully withheld from the business analyst. And I had that happen to me. Not the person didn't want the new system coming in. It was an older fellow. He was a few years from retirement. It was an accounting system for a place in Beltsville, Maryland. And so he was, let's say, less than cooperative, borderline sabotage. He didn't want a thing to fail. He just didn't want it to come in until after he was retired. So he didn't have to learn a new system. So, he gives you well, your requirements are right. We're going to be doing it, but now we find out they're wrong because the information wasn't right. And you can't judge the business analyst on that. So, how do you measure business analysts? Well, one of the things that is common is ATW, at their word. When are you going to have this done? Assuming this and this and this, I'll have it done in 2 weeks. And you measure the number of times they came in on time at their word. As opposed to you going to the business analyst and saying, I need this done in 2 weeks, and then measuring them on that. But still, that's a very shaky thing to measure anybody on. Again, you don't have total control of your time. Especially when the business analyst needs to gather information from various different people. If the people aren't available, well, there goes your timeline. Quality of requirements, and this is a tough one, but I've seen some processes which will do this, where the number of changes to this would have to be linear, because we don't care the number of changes in Agile. There's no way of tracking that. Change comes in, it goes on the backlog, and it's all about making changes. But in a linear process, when you signed off on the requirements, the number of changes that came in that should have been known beforehand would indicate that the business analyst did not do a good job of gathering the information. That would imply the business analyst is not doing the job of the business analyst. Certainly, we solved the wrong problem. Unfortunately, you can't tell that until the job's over. Oh, well, thanks, Steve. That's a great job. It's a Nobel Prize winning requirements document, but it's not what we need. I know we told you that, but it's not what we need. Again, how could you fault the business analyst? So I guess I'm saying in a very roundabout way, there's virtually nothing that we can use to measure a business analyst except anecdotal and 360 and OTW on their word.
Thank you. That's a tricky one. All right, I'm going to throw another one at you. How do we manage requirements when the requirements were elicited by another BA?
We changed it. I worked at it as a consultant to a logistics company, and my job was bringing Agile into the company back in 2011, and which we did. I mean, that was fine. But while I was there, they brought up some issues in the business analyst area. It wasn't really didn't bring it up as a business analyst problem, but the way they set it up, and this might be familiar to you, they had a business analyst or two, a team, who would develop the requirements, working with the business and getting the requirements, get the thing signed off, hand it to the solution team, and that was it. They're out of here. Our job is done. The solution team had their own business analyst who would take the requirements and kind of manage those requirements and make the changes and get the answers to the questions for the development team, the solution team. And that was causing a whole lot of problems. So one of the things that we ended up doing was we had a new process of a warranty period, because a lot of the work they did was for clients. And so we had a warranty period, which meant that after you said this is up and running and the project was over and it was delivered, there was 1 month, 30 days, where anything that came in that wasn't right would be fixed free. After that, it was an add-on you have to pay for. In order to do that, we determined that the business analyst was going to be the one who was going to manage the project. They were going to be allowed to put time in. Anything that came up, they would have to be working with. I think the project manager also got a certain percentage of time. So in all the project budgets, they allocated a certain amount over the actual budget to account for the warranty period. When you're going to have the business analyst do that, they suddenly realized that the business analyst had to stay with the requirements all the way through. So that solved that problem right there by saying, okay, you're responsible for the delivery. If you've got one person developing it and another person over here managing it who's going to be running with the project, who is going to stay with it? Who's responsible for those requirements? The person who got them in the first place, or the person who's managing it now, and they mismanage it? So since you can't make that decision up, the better answer is get only one. So you say, well, you already have that situation where you've got somebody. For one thing, you have the business analyst who created the requirements on speed dial, and you call them at 2 o'clock in the morning. That way, they'll make sure if you warn them in advance that they're going to do that, and you are the second business analyst in line, the first business analyst will probably be a little bit more careful in creating the requirements. The other thing that I would suggest, see, it's a matter of knowledge. If I am the incoming business analyst and somebody else is preparing the document, I'm going to ask to spend as much time as I can with that other person in preparing the document. You don't just say, okay, Steve, I left the document on your desk, good luck, and run off giggling into the night. I want to have an overlap where I'm talking to them, and I want them to be with me as I go into the management of this. I'm going to start working on turning these from some document into a set of user stories on a product backlog. I want that person there to look at it. I want them there in the sprint planning session to answer questions. Once you do that, and that's clearly on the table, you're probably going to get a significant increase in the quality of the requirements that you work with, and the issue will be minimized.
Thank you. We do have some more questions, so I'll get through as many as we can. This one, Steve, I'll just throw it out to you and see what you think. How do we distinguish a product manager working on product requirements versus a business analyst product requirement? Do you need a little more information for that?
No, I'll give an answer, and if it's not right, you can ask again. The product manager, if I'm a product manager, I have a large portfolio of work. I have a product line that I'm working with most likely. or maybe one single product. So I've got to look at that product line and say, okay, the competition has a competing product to ours that fits into this cost point. We don't have a competing product. We've got to develop one. Now I've got to go through the whole process of getting that. Coming up with the new product. I've got to be aware of the product life cycle. I've got to be aware of the voice of the customer. I've got to be aware of the competition in the marketplace. I've got to get the development of the new product, probably using design thinking to develop some kind of new innovative product. Choose the product that we're actually going to work with. I work with manufacturing to make sure that once it's developed, then manufacturing can take care of it. If it's software that we're manufacturing, then I'm in charge of that. Now, the business analyst takes one business problem. We don't have a product that does this. That's a problem because the competition does have a product that does this. So we need the requirements to get a product to do this. So you're focused on that one product, that one business problem. Remember, the results of any project is a product. And that's according to the PMBOK and the BABOK. Both of them make that statement. The results of a project is a product. The product provides a solution to the business problem. So your product as a business analyst that you're getting requirements for is the product that's going to be produced by this project. The product that I'm working on as a product manager is the products that have been sold by the company. That may include what you're doing and 2 or 3 things, other things that after you finish yours, I'm going to put them together with another project. I have a whole roadmap to follow. You have a PERT chart, a Gantt chart, a project plan. Okay, does that answer the question and provide the difference?
Well, I think it does. We'll just keep an eye on it, but it looks like we only have time for one more question. Steve, our last question, what procedures can the BA do to be sure that they are solving the right problem?
The alpha, checkpoint alpha is one good thing you can use. And I use it. I've been using it for dozens of years. Somebody is designated as the problem owner, not necessarily the customer, not necessarily the sponsor, but somebody who owns the problem, somebody who can make decisions about the problem, somebody who feels the pain of the problem going on, either directly or indirectly to his or her people. And you go to that person, and it could be, the sponsor or somebody like that, but you say, here, once you have defined the problem, you believe that this is the real business problem, you take it and say, is this the problem you want solved? Now, that's the person who's going to be responsible for the purse strings. They're going to go and get the money to solve it. So if it's not the problem they want to solve, if it's somebody else's problem, they're not going to pay for it. They're going to say, no, that's not the problem we want solved. Or they're going to say, gee, I didn't realize that is actually the problem we need to solve. Okay, let me take it under consideration to see if it's still worth solving. Or they'll say, yeah, solve it. That will tell you got the right problem. As I say, then chances are 8 out of 10 times you don't have the real problem. The thing that once you solve it, the entire problem is gone. There's no, if this happens, then this, it's all gone. You've achieved your vision. At that point, once you have done that, you can do a double check as part of checkpoint alpha. They say, yes, this is the problem we want to solve. Then you ask, what does it look like when we have it solved? What are your salespeople doing? What are your accounting people doing? What does it look like? Draw me a picture, a scenario of what it looks like when the problem is solved. It no longer exists. Doing that, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult. You have to pull some teeth, give them a sample. Well, what if would it look like this to get them going? But eventually, they'll give you what we call the product vision. That should map to the product problem statement. If it doesn't, then we've got a miscommunication here. We've got a miscue. We've got to go back and revisit this. If their vision of what it looks like, this is what I want to see, doesn't really solve the problem they stated, let's go back and talk about it. Now you have two components. The vision happens to match the problem, so you're pretty sure that it works. Then the final question you ask is, how are you going to know we solved it? What do we have to do to prove to you that we solved the problem? What do you need to see to prove to you we solved the problem? And then you get a list. I need to see this, 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 and this. Usually it's fairly easy to get that list. And they don't assume that their first list is 100%. They'll come back, a couple of days. Hey, one other thing, I want to see this too. Now you have the full picture. If they all work, you have the right problem. If there's anything that doesn't match quite, you go back and work some more to get the right problem. But that's a good way of making sure that you do in fact have the right problem.
Excellent, Steve. Thank you so much. That is all the time we have again today. And again, Steve, thanks for such another great session. It's always a pleasure to watch you. We'd also like to thank everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. And I'd like to remind everyone that today's webinar, along with the slides, will be archived at the ModernAnalyst.com website within a few business days. This concludes today's event, and we hope everyone has a great day. And again, Steve, thanks so much.
You're entirely welcome.